Hey guys, it's another Zapp Comic Radio podcast. It's an early morning one, so I just want to say good morning everybody. As we're recording, it's pretty early, so because I have to. I feel like you're on the other side of the world, but you're actually right in front of me, Ryan. I have a special guest this week, my good friend Ryan Racette. As you might know, is Racette from Racette's Hulk collection. I've been friends with Ryan for over 20 years, both from Massachusetts. Ryan's still up there. I am in New Jersey now, of course. So, Ryan, what's up, kiddo?
Yeah, you traitor. Yeah, you left us.
What's going on?
You know, I'm very excited. I'm excited to be here. Well, I'm excited to be here in Massachusetts and you being there, but, you know, I'm excited to talk about the Hulk this morning. That's what I'm excited.
Yes, I brought you on here because you are considered a Hulk expert, if that's even something you want to be considered. I find it an insult, but no, I'm just kidding. As you know, I'm not the biggest Hulk fan, and I've been teasing you for years about it, and it is your favorite, and which is another reason why I love you. But as far as the Hulk, the only Hulk story I truly like and enjoy is Planet Hulk.
Which is shocking, but okay.
Yeah. Okay, I've never been a Hulk fan. I mean, when I was a kid, he was kind of neat. He's a big creature, whatever. But as I got older, I'm like, yeah, there's no... I like how they use him in the Avengers, but as far as the character himself, he's like, whatever. He's cool looking. I like the way he's drawn in the 70s, you know, the classic stuff. But as far as modern day stuff, no. But when I first started working at Zapp, Planet Hulk was like right in the middle. And you always like, Corry, read Hulk. And I'm like, no, thank you. And then I saw Silver Surfer was in it, who's my boy. And I was like, well, maybe. And then the hardcover had come out, and I remember reading it in like one sitting and being like blown away by it, and I loved it. But the downside to it was I was so pumped to read Planet Hulk. I loved it. I loved it. I started selling World War Hulk like crazy, and that was awful. So that kind of killed everything. But Planet Hulk is still a top seller. We sell tons and tons of Planet Hulk. I sell it to everybody. It's a top seller here at Zapp. I love that story. I just kind of sway people away from World War Hulk the same way I sway people away from Dark Knight 2.
There's a certain I guess there's positives to World War Hulk. The problem is that much like every other event, Marvel can't really do anything long lasting in these events that, you know, happens in these, you know, they kind of have to go back to status quo at the end. Okay. So nothing really happened at the end of World War Hulk. Which
is a problem, because Planet Hulk was such a nice... You know why also Planet Hulk was in the Hulk book? Where World War Hulk kind of was an event. I don't think they realized Planet Hulk was going to be that massive and that important and that popular. Because at the time, the Hulk's title was kind of quiet, which unfortunately seems to be the way the Hulk goes these days. Unless it's like a massive reboot and relaunch, it very quickly goes to be just a subpar title that goes nowhere, which at the time it was doing. And I mean, we're going to spoil it here, so if anybody hasn't read it yet, I wouldn't really listen too much. I'm not going to go crazy detail on it, but basically, the Hulk is a menace. They don't know what to do with him. So I guess it's the Illuminati, right?
Well,
were they the Illuminati yet or no?
It was.
Well, I know it was like Namor and Stark.
Yes.
And well, they build like a spaceship and they ship him out to space. The destination being this nice, peaceful planet full of just nature and animals, so he can just kind of, you know, just be at peace, like almost like a permanent vacation.
Let's go back even further a little bit. The reason why, you know, Planet Hulk was even happening was because, all right, so we just came off of almost 3 years of the Bruce Jones run.
Ugh.
It sold like amazingly, but Hulk fans were not huge fans of that.
No, he was barely even in the book.
Well, this is the thing too, and I don't know if you read any of the interviews or anything else like that, but there's an interview in the 7-Eleven promotional comic book that they brought out for the 2008 Hulk movie.
Okay.
And it was the Hulk number 25. It was right before his run started. So he didn't even write the book, but they, for some reason, just put an interview with him in it.
Okay.
And he said when he was hired to write the Hulk, he didn't know how to write the Hulk. So he just started writing a story and decided not to put the Hulk in it just yet, because he didn't know how to find the voice for the character. it was one of the most, bizarre things I ever read. That, like, Marvel hiring a guy to write the Hulk and him being like, yeah, I don't know how to write the Hulk, so I just won't put him in the book. He said he'd like to have another crack at it, but for me, I was just like, you had 3 years. 3 years!
Yeah, you know what's funny? It was a top seller at the time, but now, like, it's, in the bins, it doesn't, like, even we have them for like $1.50, they still don't sell. They don't sell it at half off sales. It's kind of like the forgotten, overlooked thing.
But it's funny because right after the Bruce Jones run, they brought back Peter David. And that small run that he did, what was it, like 5-6 issues? He set it up so that it kind of cleaned up Bruce Jones' continuity. Back then, they were very, very centered on the idea that continuity still mattered. It doesn't seem that way so much anymore.
No, not at all.
Yeah, they just let people write whatever they want to write. But then they were like, well, we have to kind of clean up everything that Jones did. So Peter David came in and wrote a great story, which my memories, I'm not recalling the name of the story, but it basically said everything that happened in the past 3 years, maybe it happened, maybe it didn't. You can decide what actually did and what didn't happen. And the thing is, Marvel rolled with that and has never referenced anything that's actually happened in the Bruce Jones run, like in the Marvel continuity.
It's smart. It's good. Good for them. They did something right,
Right. So, thankfully, right after that, that's when, in the Marvel Universe, Civil War was happening.
Yes.
What do you do with the Hulk in an event of Civil War? No matter what side you put the Hulk on, they have a huge cannon to go to. What do you do?
Yeah, you can't. And that was a perfect thing. Just send him away, his own little world.
Exactly. Like the other problem, of course, being that the Hulk never plays well with other people.
No.
He's never been a team guy. He's been on pretty much every team Marvel's had, but the only team that seems to work with him is the Defenders. But of course, the Defenders is the quote unquote non-team of Marvel. They don't get along, and they don't usually want to be together, which is perfect for the Hulk.
Yeah.
So again, how do you handle that character? Perfect. You know what? Let's send him away. Let's put him on his own thing, and then we don't have to worry about it, which actually turned out amazing for the Hulk fans, because all of a sudden Greg Pak came along to write this epic.
Oh, it was great. It was in a way it was packaged. It was perfect because it didn't really have any crossovers. It's its own thing, and it was a very easy jumping on point as far as like I said, you had 3 years of this, the Bruce Jones run and the Peter David run with a little bridge, but you had Civil War going on, which involved every major character in the Marvel Universe, and then where's the Hulk? Well, it's very easy. The Hulk is in space on this planet that he inadvertently crashed onto because he woke up and was pretty upset and destroyed the ship he was on, and it crashed onto a gladiator battle world as opposed to just a nice peaceful planet. And then it
was really well written.
Oh, it was great. It was great. I was so hooked in that book when I was reading it. I could not put that book down, and I was just waiting for. Initially, I was waiting to see how Silver Surfer had come in, but when I first started reading it, I didn't care because it was so good. Even the prelude to it, where they first sent them up, was fantastic.
You have to remember too. I mean, it's just the shock of the way that Planet Hulk happened, the way that they tricked him into that rocket ship. S.H.I.E.L.D. came along. Nick Fury said, listen, Bruce, we have an artificial intelligence satellite up there that we need you to take care of. No one else can do it. You're the smartest guy, and then if you get into trouble, of course, the other guy can come out. So they kind of tricked him into going up into space. And, Bruce Banner being ultimately having the heart of a hero was like, okay, if I'm the only one who can help, then I will do it. So he goes into the rocket ship, willingly gets shot into space, takes care of the artificial intelligence, so takes care of the satellite, destroys it. And then it's like, all right, I'm ready to come home. And sure enough, a message plays with some of the people you consider heroes saying, so listen, here's the thing. You know, over the years, you've caused a lot of damage. People might have even lost their lives. And we know that you just want to be left alone. So guess what? It's your birthday. You're going to be left alone. We're going to send you somewhere where you're going to be all gone. And it was such a betrayal, because they came to him for help, and he was more than willing to help. And the way that he figured this out, of course, is as he's battling that satellite, you know, one of the tentacles or something like that wraps around the Hulk, and he noticed the shield emblem. So it wasn't something that was getting out of control. It was something that they actually sent up there and then used it to trick the Hulk to go and take care of it. It was a really shocking beginning. So you're already going like, what is happening? Then he crash lands on this planet, and right out of the gate, you know, he comes out of the rocket ship and immediately is attacked. And he starts to, you know, I mean, the green scar thing immediately starts because he gets cut on this planet, which doesn't happen on Earth. So you immediately know you're in a brand new realm. You know, he gets cut, but his blood drips onto the crust of the planet there, and a plant grows. And there immediately people are like, oh my God, wait a minute, you know, who is this being? Then of course, like you said, he gets thrust into you know, basically gladiator style battles, which again was something we hadn't seen in that kind of realm. You know, we haven't seen the Hulk do.
The cool thing about it wasn't like one or two issues. You know what I mean? Like where they normally they are now. It's a couple issues, and then they're like, oh, we got to throw this character in. It was
right.
like a huge arc, which I think the comics have kind of lost. You know, now, and I also think that the new generation, they're so used to trades and collections that they don't like reading this big arc. They get like kind of bored with it unless it's you get it all at once. So you don't get these arcs like this anymore.
But also, I mean, keep in mind too, the story itself was actually broken up into different.
Oh yeah, I know, but I'm saying he was there for a very long time.
Yeah, which is what worked well. I think that the way that they were saying it too is like, while Civil War was going on, you know, we have to have him doing stuff. So, you know, Greg Pak wrote it in a way where it was still written to be broken up into collections, but then it suddenly became like word of mouth. People were saying Planet Hulk is this amazing story, and Marvel finally realized, hey, wait, we got something going on here. Finally, with the Hulk. It's hard because years and years and years of writers who, you know, like Peter David had that 12-year run, and he knew how to write that character, but he knew, I mean, he's just such an amazing writer too. He put things into the Hulk book that wouldn't pay off for years down the road. So he had in mind where he wanted to go.
Yeah.
Like, for example, during that Ground Zero story, remember the Ground Zero story?
Mm-hmm.
It was, you know, when McFarlane was on the book, and it was like 340 to 345.
You know what's funny? A lot of people are so associating McFarlane with Spawn and Spider-Man. A lot of people have no idea he drew the Hulk.
Oh,
it's kind of funny.
His run was some of the most fun stuff. But in that Ground Zero run, Peter David just threw in a shot. I think it was like a 343 or 345. He threw in a shot of aliens watching the Hulk, saying, is that him? I don't know, he looks different. It must be him. Readings are saying it's him. And then didn't explain it, didn't do anything else, just had that little shot of like aliens watching him. And then when the Fix-It era came along, I think it was in the 350s, like 352, 354 maybe, he went back to Kai. Remember Kai, which was the micro world from Jarella and everything else? Those were the aliens watching him back in 343. So, like, he put that shot in, didn't explain it, but a year later it pays off, and you suddenly say, like, this guy has had this stuff in the canon for a year.
Well, and when that also, you got to, the company has to let you be able to do that too. You know, a lot of times when you talk to creators after these storylines are done, they say, well, initially it wasn't supposed to do that. I was writing this character, and then they needed the character for another storyline, so I had to change things up. Or I know it happened a few times in the DC universe with like Donna Troy with the Green Lantern with Kyle Rayner. Everything was going fine, but then I don't know if it was Byrne or Perez needed her in the Wonder Woman book, so they kind of took her out of Green Lantern, and it changed everything. So it wasn't like what they initially had planned. So with Planet Hulk and like Peter David and stuff like that were writing and going on, like they were able to, like I said, Peter was able to lay this out for years, kind of like Dan Slott does with Spider-Man now, where he just writes. He's been writing it forever, and it just goes and goes and goes. You can tell he has it lined up for the next like 20 issues. You know, it's not event. Stuff pops up here and there, but you can tell it's just, you can just commit yourself to that one book and just go with it. And Hulk used to be like that.
And look at how well that worked out. You
know, it was great.
Look how well it works out now. I mean, like with Spider-Man. I mean, I actually have been reading Spider-Man for the first time in years because of how well it's written. It reminds me of that third series, the Silver Surfer series.
Yes.
From issue 1, they were already setting up things that were going to be happening for the Infinity Gauntlet. From like issue 1 until like 20, you know, the celestial beings in space are talking about the Infinity Stones and using them against Galactus because they have all this power. They didn't even know how to use them. And then that sets everything up for, you know, the return of Thanos, and then Thanos' what was it called? Thanos
Quest.
Yeah, Thanos Quest. It sets everything up for that. And so you think, oh, well, Thanos just figured out where all these, stones were. But if you were reading the Silver Surfer, you already knew where they were, because they had set it up years before that.
Yeah, no, it's great, and that's why that series is very beloved, and it's a very easy series to sell to people, because they're not expensive books, and it doesn't really cross over into anything like that. And that's when Surfer first got that ban lifted where he can go into space again, because he was stuck on Earth, you know, from Galactus. So they're like, okay, he can go now, and it's like, oh, cool, and you just followed him, and like I said, you can just read that one series, and you can just go. I mean, obviously, Infinity Gauntlet, you got the crossovers, then it gets really messy with War and Crusade with the crossovers being everywhere. But the first part, the initial run, and then when Starlin comes in issue 34, it's awesome. And then the Ron Lim art from issue 15 up is amazing. I love Ron Lim's. He's not the best artist in the world, but his art for Surfer was amazing. I love his Surfer. I love Ron Lim's Surfer. And that's my favorite series of all time, aside from the Valentino Guardians of the Galaxy run in the 90s. The Silver Surfer run, Series 1, is my all-time favorite. I love that series.
I'm actually, I've been reading it for the past I don't know how long exactly it's been. I want to say, I read it almost monthly, almost like I've been picking it up, but I've been also, doing it as fast as I can. I'm up to issue, I believe it's like 110 or 111. And it's been really, really good. But what you notice too is that the writers who pick up the ball, take everything that was happening beforehand and run with it. So when Starlin, took over the writings for the Surfer series there, when he started writing, he used everything that the person did before. He was using everything that was happening already.
Well, and it seemed like books used to be like that more than now, where you would kind of just continue with it, where now everybody just comes in and they reinvent it, or they restart it, or... I mean, that's just the way the business is nowadays. Where back then, too, there wasn't as many titles, so it was a little bit different, where now it's all about shelf space and real estate, so there's millions and millions of titles, where back then there wasn't.
But it also seems like that writers want to just put their stamp on something.
Yeah. It's like a director making a movie. Even though you can just take the script, you're like, oh, I want to put my own take on it. So I'm going to make him 5 feet taller and have a robotic arm, just because that's my version of it. It's like, but that's not the character. But they want to put their stamp on it,
Like Jason Aaron, who's a very skilled writer. I've read a lot of his different stuff. I very much enjoyed his Wolverine stuff, and a lot of his Punisher stuff is fantastic.
Did you read Southern Bastards?
I have not read Southern
That
Bastards.
dude, I have to start reading that book. People salivate over that book. That book, they say, is fantastic. The first 2 trades are both $10 each. It just got picked up by FX, optioned by FX for a show, and they say it's the best book on the shelf. And the way it sells, I think it is. So he's going to be a big name. He already is, but I'm just saying the next year or two, he could be like kind of like a Kirkman.
And he did a run of the Hulk that was despised.
Oh yeah, people hated it.
Yeah, because he tried to do something very different, but it was so out of character for everything that had come before it and everything that, we had learned about the Hulk. It was so, hated that, it only lasted a year. No,
I know it didn't. It didn't. And I think that's when Silvestri started out too.
Yes.
You can tell Silvestri. I know he's a busy guy, running like with Top Cow and everything like that. So I'm sure he signed on to do the book, and you can tell a lot of the pages were rushed. I don't even know if he finished. I think Potasio came in and finished up some of the stuff he was supposed to do, right?
Right. Keep this in mind when you're talking about that run. The first 3 issues was the Silvestri issues,
yes.
Right? The first issue, I have it over here. I'm gonna double check my thoughts here, but the first issue was Silvestri, and I think he had one other person drawing it with him. The second issue, there were 6 pencilers on the book.
Yeah, I know there were. It was very like put together. You could tell it was very. And I think it was a thing he signed on to do. I just don't. Maybe he just didn't the stuff takes time, so I don't think he purposely did it like this. But obviously he's running a company. And this is like a side thing, and obviously they want to use his name to sell the book, which I understand. It'd be like McFarlane or Frank Miller doing it, but it's like Jim Lee. That's why all of Jim Lee's books are usually. He can't do monthly books because he's one of the guys running DC Comics. He can't sit down and draw an entire series. It's just you don't have time.
All right, so here's what I have. Right, all right, so the issue number 2, they had 10 different artists on the book.
Yeah.
So they had 6 different pencilers and 4 different inkers. Now, when you're reading a book, art, as much as people say, I care about the story only, art is a huge part of the medium. Obviously, it's a visual medium. So when you're flipping through the book and all of a sudden the style just changes on you, it's a little jarring.
Yes.
It does kind of take you out of this world that they've been creating for you. And so when you have 10 different artists on one book...
Oh, no, it's messy. It was a mess. It was messy, and then the series just disappeared. And then Indestructible Hulk came out after that, right?
Oh, yes.
And that started out hotcakes with Mark Waid, and then, again, it got lost again. And then the current series, just called Hulk. Hulk doesn't sell like it should. He's such a beloved character, and I notice a lot of the Hulk fans, I think they feel like you guys feel like he's kind of like lost. Like it's almost like they don't know what to do with him.
Well, here's the thing, and I actually didn't mind the Mark Waid run. It started off really well, like you said, and I thought he had a really genuinely great idea and a good grasp of the character. But social media plays a sometimes really great part in society, and then, of course...
Oh, yeah, well, the other side.
There's the negative side to it, which is that every single person has access to these creators now, that they can just say whatever they want, and a lot of people behind the keyboard don't, when you're not face-to-face with a person... Oh,
you get some balls. I've noticed that a lot. Like, if you go on social media, and the thing is, too, even if it's a small group, they look bigger than they are, which is very deceiving. So you can be like, oh, this book isn't selling because every message board I go on to, or every time I go on Twitter, they're just bashing it. It's like, you know what? That's our top selling item. It's like, what? But you don't know. If you're just sitting there reading what's going on, like everybody bashes New 52. New 52 was huge, monumentally big. I can't even describe how big it is. But if you go online and you just read message, you think it was a bomb.
Right.
You know what I mean? But it's not. Well, it's completely the opposite.
So I'm reading Wade's run, and I'm thinking, like, this is actually, he knows his continuity, he knows his Marvel history, he's doing some really good stuff, and,
and the thing, and not to cut you off, Wade is very accessible. Wade's one of those guys where you can reach out to him and he's going to answer you. So he pays attention to you. Which can which can be a bad thing.
I have a story about this too, but there were slight misses, but for the most part, I mean, it was well. And then of course the events came, because we do an event every year, so he had to tie the Hulk into these events like Inhumanity, and he also had to tie it into, what was the one that was right after Inhumanity? It
was either Fear Itself, Original Sin.
Yeah, I believe it was the Fear Itself one. He had to tie these, issues into, and that's always going to stop your flow.
Of course it is.
You're going to do, but by the way, Marvel says you got to tie the Hulk into this this epic run of event comics, and you're going like, well, how? I have this idea I'm going with, and it doesn't fit into that. But you're working for the man. You got to do what the man says. But Wade let it get to him. Wade let the Hulk backlash get to him. And a good friend of mine, and I'll even preface this by saying this is something Wade allegedly said, but a good friend of mine was actually having dinner with a group of comic creators, including Wade. And Wade had even said in the conversation that, well, he allegedly said in the conversation that, he got so bothered by the Hulk fans' reactions, he started putting things in the Hulk book that he knew would piss them off. He started writing things that he knew would get the fans angry, almost as like a payback. And for me, that really bothered me, because as a professional, you don't let that stuff get to you. And if you're going to be accessible on social media, you got to have a thick skin. You can't let it bother you.
But to be fair, it's easier said than done. Because it happens, like, you're in a store, like, especially here, you got to remember it's a business, and there's guys that come in here that you don't really care for, because you can see on social media or on reviews, they've left you a bad review, or said something to you on a message board that somebody showed you. Like, you can see their names. So when they come in, they're still a paying customer, and they act like they're your best friend. You still have to put that face on, like, hey, what's up, so-and-so. But deep down inside, you're like, oh, my God, this guy, I saw what this guy wrote, and I'm burning up. But and your part of you wants to just turn you back, but you know what, they're a paying customer, you got to take care of them like everybody else. It's easier said than done, though, because I can, it's being like an actor or an athlete. These guys are screaming at you. I mean, it's you can ignore it, but there's sometimes where they're gonna touch a nerve, and it's like I know what you said, like you got to be professional, whatever. But I kind of respect Wade for that, because I'd probably do the same thing. You know what I mean? Just because, like, it's like, and it's also a power thing. It's like, listen, I'm in control, you're not. Or, oh, you don't like that? Well, guess what? You're getting it. I get like that, too. Because you kind of get, I don't know if it's...
I know. You know what? I know what you're saying, and you are right. And
well, should he have done it? No, he shouldn't have done it. If that is true, which we're not sure if it is, if that is true, and if he did do that, he shouldn't have. But, I mean, who knows?
But it's funny, too, that you say, like, because when do you actually have a chance to get back?
That's what I'm saying,
at your taunters, who, and they can't do anything to retaliate, you know? They can just do what they've always been doing, which, at that point, you can't let it bother you.
Yeah.
But I actually met Wade at the Boston Comic Con right after the Hulk run, after his Hulk run ended. I met Wade, and I knew I just wanted an autograph on the thing, and I wanted to let him know that not everybody despised the run. Not everybody had a problem with the run. So I went up there, and I had 3 Hulk books for him to sign, and I think
I'm hoping that he wrote all 3 of the books that you had him sign.
Well, he was talking. And he's talking to the guy before me. He's talking like, going back and forth, and he's laughing and he's smiling, and he's like, all right, well, nice to meet you, man. And then he turned to me, and I put my books down, and I swear his face dropped.
I'm sure he did. Because he's probably waiting for, like, okay, here we go. Because I met him like 15 years ago in New York at a Madison Square Garden show. Very friendly. I kind of bumped into him. He signed one of the Flash issues I had that he had done. Very friendly. It was about 2-minute 2-minute meeting, whatever, and it was super cool. Regular guy, nice to meet you, thank you for everything, type of thing. So he's just a regular dude.
Yeah, like you said, I don't blame him for his reaction. Like his reaction, like smiles and everything, and he turned to me, he saw the books, and his face just like went stoic, and I'm like, okay, this is not good. And I tried to be like, I know not everybody was a fan of this book, but I actually really, really enjoyed it. And he signed all 3. Didn't really look up. He just signed all 3, and then slid them back, smiled, and said, "Thank you." And I went, "Okay, I'm out." Like,
yeah. See ya. Later, dude.
Just like I was like, man, I feel so bad because it's like one of those things where you want to let this creator know, like, I know you're getting a lot of backlash for this, but I think it was actually very entertaining, and I saw the direction you were going in. I wanted to say all of this, but I saw his face, and I was like, "Yep, I don't think we're going there."
Well, I had a similar, not a similar, but it's also too. He might have been like, "Listen, it's a subject I don't want to talk about because I don't want to get into this big debate." Maybe he had.
Well, the book was still fresh.
It's still fresh. So when I'm a huge Turtle fan, as you know. I met Kevin Eastman many times. Nicest guy in the world. Now, this is going back 20 years ago when Turtles were kind of like dead. So when I meet Eastman, there would be nobody else there, and he would do awesome commissions for me and sketches. We would BS about Massachusetts and the early days of the Turtles and Northampton and everything. So I finally got it, and Laird didn't do much for Turtle stuff at the time. So I finally met Laird like 10 years ago or so. And I met him. The line was huge. It was up there. I think it was by Worcester or something. I can't remember which shop it was, but I remember waiting in line, meeting him, and I was so excited to meet him. I was talking to him, and he was very friendly. And I said, "Can you do me a sketch?" And he said, "Well, if you wait and you go back in line, I'll do one. Right now, I just want to do all the signatures." I said, "I understand." I said, "Fine, cool." And then I said, and I just meant to say it like, "Oh yeah, like I want to be part of your group." I just said, "Hey, I meet Eastman all the time. He draws me all the time." And and he gave me this nasty look, signed the thing, and kind of was like, "Next." I think he thought I was saying like, "Oh, really? Well, Eastman does them for me all the time." When I meant like, "Oh, cool, Eastman does them for me all the time," and I was so like embarrassed and confused, I didn't get back in line. So if I ever do meet him again, I'm gonna bring that up, and I kind of want to apologize to him because I think he just took it the wrong way, and he didn't know how I was saying it. I think he took it like, because then when I rethought it, I'm like, oh crap, he probably said like, "Oh well, Kevin does it anytime I want him to," and you're telling me to get back in line. When I meant like, "Oh great, because I have some from Kevin, now you're going to get one from you." So I never got my Peter Laird sketch, which I should have, because in hindsight, those things are so expensive now, I can't buy them. You know what I mean? And if I go there, you're probably going to charge me. But at that time, you could just get whatever you wanted.
It's so hard too, because when you meet these creators, in your head, you're so excited and you have so much to say to them, and then when you get face to face, that first thing that you say is probably a culmination of the 1,000 things that you wanted to say to him, and it comes off wrong, or it comes off...
I pissed off the lead singer, Peter Steele, who unfortunately passed away from Typo Negative. I was waiting in line to meet them at Newbury Comics in Braintree.
Yeah.
And I was standing there, I was waiting. Actually, I pissed off 2 of them, which is like, it's a record. Remember those pens before Sharpies became all different colors, when Sharpies were just black? Now they have gold, silver, pink, whatever.
Right.
The ones that they actually have the ball in, and you have to shake it to really get it. It's almost like paint. Well, I was so nervous that it wouldn't work, I shook it the entire time I was in line, so they wouldn't have to do it. And they're, it's a dark metal band. They're all wearing like black leather and hair, whatever. Very friendly though. And I forget which one it was. I don't know if it was a bassist or guitarist. I gave it to him and he shook it. And when he shook it, it kind of like splatted on his like $300 leather jacket. And he was so pissed. And I was like, oh my god. Like, obviously I didn't do it, but I was like, he's like, because you can't wipe that off. It's on there.
Right.
So then I piss him off. Okay. He shoves me away, and I'm talking to Peter Steele, and I'm like, I know you're a big Beatles fan. I love the Beatles. We're going back and forth. Everything's very friendly. And I go, and your voice is very unique. I go, it's like your voice. I said, and I meant this as a comment. I said, your voice is like, because he has a very, I don't know, I'm sure if you ever heard Typo Negative. The singer's very deep voice. I go, your voice. I go, you're like the Darth Vader of the music world. He looks down, finishes signing, pushes it away and is like, dude, get away from me. And I meant it like, it's very unique and distinctive. And I think but I must have said it wrong, because whatever it was, I think he might have thought like I was calling him Darth Vader. When I meant like, when you hear it, you know what it is.
I think maybe he must have thought you were making fun of him.
I don't know. I wasn't. I was so excited to meet him, and it's like, I have this beautiful, centerfold from I don't know what magazine it was, signed by all of them. It's really cool, but part of me is like, it's a good conversation piece, but it's not something like, and unfortunately he passed away. So it was just one of those weird things. But going back to Wade, it's like, you don't know what's going in his head when you walked up. You know what I mean? And who knows, two guys before you, he might have had an argument about the book. You know what I mean?
Right.
So he sees you, and I mean, if I see you coming, I'm like, oh no, here we go. And then he sees what books you have. He's probably like, oh boy.
Do you think that the singer there? Do you think Pete Steele, on his deathbed was like, jerk? You're Darth Vader. Like,
probably. I mean, I was like, I don't know, 17 years old. I was by myself. I was standing in line, for hours waiting for him. And this is before like cell phones and internet. So you just stood there and looked at whether you had a book in your hand or whatever was in the shelf or the back of the person in front of you. You couldn't I couldn't text people. You know what I mean? This is back in the day. I'm just standing there all day waiting. And that's my Peter Steele moment.
That's awesome, though. That is great. Well, so like I said, I had met Wade and so I met Wade and like I said, I wanted to tell him that I enjoyed, the run, and that's when I met up with my friend at the Comic-Con who was just like, dude, you know who I had dinner with? And then he told me the whole story, which actually kind of, like I said, it didn't sit well with me.
So you met him before you knew that story.
Right.
Okay, and that story just happened. Like that dinner had just happened.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And it was one of those things where it was like, man, I championed for you, man. Like, I've been talking up your book and everything else like that, and that did kind of bother me in a way that, like, I don't look favorably back on Indestructible Hulk.
Okay.
But then, and I know we're supposed to be talking more about Planet Hulk, but, it just seems to segue into the fact that then they renumbered the Hulk yet again. Like, here's Mark Waid's run, it's going on, and he has these ideas, and all of a sudden they go, hey, by the way, we're just going to restart Hulk at #1 again. And I don't know if you remember this time where Mark Waid was even saying, if anybody out there is saying, like, oh, this is just a money grab and, like, they're renumbering for no reason, he's like, I agree with you.
That's what it is. The #1s always sell better than anything else. Like, if you're starting a new, nowadays, like, you're not going to see, like, back in the day, like, Hush, Batman 608, you'd see, oh, here comes Jim Lee and Jeff Loeb. They wouldn't do that nowadays. They would just give it a #1, or they would give him a secondary title. Like, when Finch went over to DC, they're like, here, you're going to get Dark Knight. This is your book. Where back in the day, they would put him on Batman or Detective and have him start it. Nowadays, they actually give them their own book or restart, because I'm curious about, the Batman going on now because it's Snyder and Capullo, and there's rumors like crazy saying they're only signed on for issue 50. Which is cool. Now, once they leave, I'm sure they're going to keep going on with the book. But if they go somewhere else or start something else, I don't see them jumping onto a book. I see them giving them a book, or if they're on the book together, I'm not sure. But if Snyder gets another DC book, it's going to be a #1.
But get this too, like, back in the day, I have.
Back in the day, nobody wanted #1s. If you look, I mean, this is going way back. If you go back to the Silver Age DC, like. I think it's Aquaman, Atom, and Hawkman #1s. They don't have numbers in Metal Men. They don't have numbers on the cover because back then a #1 was like a turnoff.
But even remember, like, there's a moment in the '90s where they stopped numbering Marvel books.
Well, that was when the market crashed, when the comic book almost disappeared. So they didn't know what to do. So they hid the number, like in the UPC code. That's like the only place you can kind of find it, or the indica inside the cover. Like it's a pain filing them because there's like a handful of books of every series. It's like, where are the numbers?
Yeah. Well, and here's my...
They didn't know what to do. They didn't know how to. They didn't know what to do. This is a new world for them. They didn't know how to they didn't know how to react to it.
Well, my whole thought process was a lot of this can actually be traced back to the Image founders and the Image, revolution as it is, because, at that point, when the artists started getting really hot, and there was the handful of creators who could sell a book by their name only. McFarlane, Liefeld, Lee,
Eric Larson.
Eric Larson, and then Silvestri was also
really Wilson Potasio.
So you had all these people who had a lot of clout all of a sudden. These artists who had a lot of clout, who Marvel wanted to keep them happy, but also they also wanted to kind of cash in on this whole new idea of having superstar artists out there. So then they started giving them number ones. They started giving them their own titles, and they sold like gangbusters. And then, of course, the Image guys left, created Image, and all of those number ones, every single time a number one came out, it was selling at the very, top of the heap. So that's kind of where I think a lot of the ideas of, hey, number ones, people jump on these number ones like crazy. That's kind of where it all came from.
Oh yeah, that's where the main part of it is. I mean, they've done it before with Superman, Man of Steel one, and but like going back to your thoughts, X-Men number one, Jim Lee, the number one selling book of all time, mostly because of the multiple covers, but you got to count them. Spider-Man number one, McFarlane, and the X-Force number one by Liefeld. Like they were all the big books at the time. That's the series went on for years after they left.
But it also is what kind of, in my opinion, started making the market crash a little bit too.
Oh yeah, because people buying. I remember I bought every single. I remember I pre-ordered every single. There was 5 covers to X-Men, A, B, C, D, and E, right? And
yep.
I pre-ordered like 5 each copy, like 10 of the gatefold cover, and then when it came out that day, I still bought more off the shelf. Spawn number one, I had like 10 copies of Spawn number one. Savage Dragon number one. All they did was change the color of the logo, like the back. I have all of them. Everybody bought them. That's what you bought. You bought Malt. That's what you did, because that's why now I think the market is so strong and so healthy, because everybody is reading these books. Because when we were buying them, you weren't reading them. Like some people did, but you were just like, oh, it's a new McFarlane book. Check out these splash pages, which were beautiful. But that's what they would buy. They didn't care what the writing was. The story wasn't there. It was an exception to like a John Byrne maybe, or something like that. But if you looked at the top 20 hot people in comics at the time, it was all artists. Now, it's all writers. But you'll see like an Adam Hughes in there now, or Jim Lee obviously, and Ivan Rice. But majority of it's all writers. It's all like Hickman, Kirkman, all that. It's Jason Aaron, Remender. They're all writers, because everybody's reading, which is great.
Well, the speculators came in at a time it was a very odd time, because I remember the Death of Superman, came right, and it was the black bag, Superman with the bloody Superman logo. It was cool, and I remember getting a ride from right out of high school and going right to the comic shop to pick it up. And the comic shop was packed that day. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, I've never seen so many people in there. But of course they had news coverage of it. They had, like everybody was talking about it. So they put out the books and was like, okay, all books are all set. And the first guy that went up there took the entire stack of Superman and put them on the counter, and everybody was like, what the hell? Like, he literally took every single issue that they had on the shelf and put them up there, and so they rung them up, and he left. They didn't put up a, the limit quantity, whatever else, like they do now sometimes with books. He took the entire stack. When he left, the guy behind the counter went, don't worry, guys, I got you covered, and pulled out a whole other stack.
Oh, no, that's why it's funny. Like, now, like, I know we were supposed to Planet Hulk, but I want to go into this because I remember, going to the shop when I was a kid. New England Comics was my shop, and Brockton, which I went with you for years. I know they moved the location a couple times, but I remember going. At the time they had once a year, kind of like we do here, at Zapp. They had a 50% off sale of the back issues, but they would have 30% off the wall books, like the Jello Tag books that we do here. And I remember there was a Justice League number 21 up there, a Silver Age book. It's the first time the Justice Society crosses over into the Justice League book. Like, Silver Age meets Golden Age. And I remember wanting that book for so long, I saved up all my money. And I was like, I hope I can get it for the sale. And I remember the sale came, I don't know, I was probably like 10th in line. I run in there, and everybody's like in front of me, we're going crazy, and nobody's even mentioning it. So I asked for it, and the guy gives it to me. I'm like, yeah. And I see people like asking for like Ghost Rider number 1, Punisher number 1, and like all these books. And I remember they go, hey, can I have that Ghost Rider number 1? They go, yeah, no problem. And they would take them from underneath the counter and give them to him. And they kept doing it. But I asked for Justice League 21, and I was the only one who got it. So I'm like laughing, like, this is weird. I'm like, those aren't rare because they have stacks of them. Which is why, I don't know if you saw, we just got in an All-Star Comics number 3 here at the shop.
Oh my God.
Okay, that is the very first Justice Society America. We've never had that book before. Unless we actually search out and buy it, we probably will never get offered that book again. Okay, that book is super, super rare. It's super, super important. Now, we've been in business since 1993. I'm pretty sure that's the only one we've ever had. Yeah. Did you realize how many New Mutants 98s or Hulk 181s we've had? Thousands. Thousands. I don't get excited. I don't get excited when somebody brings in an Amazing Spider-Man number 1, and I hate saying that because we get them all the time.
But this is the thing that astounds me. New Mutants 98 was in quarter bins before all of a sudden.
Oh, of course it was.
Hit huge. But it wasn't just like, here's another New Mutants 98. There was like stacks upon stacks of them because New Mutants was selling really well at that time. And then, all of a sudden, it just didn't sell anything. Like, it was all about image, and all those,
Yeah, no, I know.
And then Liefield's, kind of star kind of imploded, and nobody wanted anything. And if you look back at the art in New Mutants 98, I've never been a Liefeld fan. I'm going to be honest with you. I love McFarlane, and I think McFarlane, even to this day, I know people think his art style is very 90s, and they're not wrong. But it was unique then, and it's still unique now. I mean, he has a style that, you could tell he has certain influences, but he made it his own.
Well, and if you look now at McFarlane, like if you're a new guy coming in, it looks 90s or it looks very generic because a lot of people copied him. So, like, but you don't know. Like, when he came out, people were like, what is, they used to like Kurt Swan, Perez, and, Ramita Sr., like clean, nice, and all of a sudden here comes this, like, his elbows are over here and there's webbing everywhere, and it was literally amazing. But you've never seen that before. Well, now that's kind of like what you do. You know what I mean? Because he started that trend.
But you look at his stuff, and when you look at and see all of those pages, I mean, it's amazing. His art is actually very, very well done.
Yes.
And then you look at Liefeld stuff, and it's scratchy, and it's mostly just characters. There's no backgrounds. With McFarlane, there was always backgrounds. Like the city played a different character in his book. It was, so I was never a fan, anyways. But when I heard that this book was starting to hit huge, I mean, my friend Bill, he had like a handful of copies of this book.
Everybody did. I had 4 or 5 copies because you bought multiple copies. It was the first. I remember when it came out. I remember buying it because it was leading up to number 100, which was the last issue before X-Force came out. And it was 98. They were introducing 3 new characters: Gideon, Domino, and Deadpool. And I had remember there was more hype for Domino than was Deadpool because they were trying this character out. And Deadpool didn't hit big till a little later on. Kind of like Harley Quinn. She wasn't a big character when she first popped up, but she kind of got that from people. And I always compare those to The Nightmare Before Christmas. That movie came out, it bombed, nobody liked it, but enough people who loved it got it going, and next thing you know, it's this classic, and it's huge. But it wasn't when it came out. That movie was, I remember I didn't like it, and until I saw it a second or third time, but when it first came out, it bombed.
It was it was called like a cult classic. It was going to be this big thing until word of mouth got around, and people actually, but
it took a while. It took a while for that word of mouth to really get it to snowball.
Oh yeah, because if you try to get the first run of toys back then, they were not only were they super rare, but they were wicked expensive because nobody bought them.
No.
And all of they said, hey, wait a minute, this movie's brilliant, all of a sudden people were like, hey, I want this. But with these comic books that we're talking about, they were already huge. These people were already huge. Their runs were in the millions. So, they're everywhere. These books are everywhere.
No, I know, but it's supply and demand. There's, like Hulk 181 is not rare, but everybody wants it. It's got the gorgeous, sexy cover. Everybody wants a hot girl at the prom, and that's what Hulk 181 is. That's what New Mutants 98 is. Everybody wants it. It's everybody wants the first Harley Quinn. Everybody wants these books, and I get it, but it's just like when we get into Werewolf by Night 32, the first Moon Knight, we're like, we get excited because we never get that book ever, ever. And when we get it, it's like, oh my God, here it is. And then we'll get oh, somebody else has a Hulk 181. We get excited because people want it, but as far as a personal thing, I don't get excited to see it because it's like, oh, here comes another one.
But here's the fun part too, right? When I was going around and collecting all the Hulk appearances, I get excited at Cage number 9. Okay, nobody wants Cage.
Trust me, you're the only person that's ever gotten excited about Cage number 9.
No one wants Cage number 9, but I see it and I'm like, oh yes. And so I always asked people. I always said to the people at the shows and stuff, when I would talk to some of the comic book owners, the shop owners, which I know quite a few of them now really well. I've been out to dinner with a couple of them, and I would always say, like, why don't you guys bring these things like that nobody else ever sees? Bring out the Namor issues and that and stuff. And I know that they're only like dollar bin stuff, but you could probably wipe through all that stuff and make a pretty good return. And they used to say, like, people don't come to shows for that. People don't come to shows to fill holes in their collection anymore.
No.
People come to see the big books.
Yep. No, that's what it is. The shows are different. The market's changing. It's very mainstream now, which is great. But our generation is going away. The new generation, which there are multiples, like this market would gladly trade one of you or one of me for 10 of the new guys. Because we're married, we have houses, we have kids, we have expenses, so we have to pick and choose. But if you're fresh out of college, a brand new job, and you got money to spend, every week they're gonna drop 50, 60, 80, $100 a week on trades and toys and hardcovers and new issues. Where when we drop like maybe $20 and complain about it because like, oh my God, why is there 2 covers? I just want one. You know what I mean? Like. But listen, we're running low on time. I don't want to. The main reason why I had you on here was because Planet Hulk, and when somebody asks me about Hulk and what's good, I say, listen, I'm not a Hulk fan, but one of my all-time favorite comic book stories is Planet Hulk. It's a very easy sell. Everybody I've ever sold to loved it. What would you point out as a good jumping-on point or a favorite Hulk issue for a new reader or someone who would like to, aside from the movies and the cartoon that they know the Hulk from, what would you say, here, pick this up?
Well, all right, so...
I mean, I know you're a big fan of the Peter David stuff, but do you have like one pinpoint issue or starting point for people? Now,
see, my favorite issue is 165 with the Aquan.
Yeah, that's the worst thing ever.
Yeah, it's one of those stories that I think encapsulates the Hulk really well. But you know what? I don't tell people to go pick that book up. I tell them, if you want to know what the Hulk is about and you want to see not only how beautiful this book can be, but also how fantastic and gruesome and intriguing the book can be, pick up like Hulk number 372. That's the issue that the Green Hulk came back. Now, the Gray Hulk had been, from even like in the early
Is 372 the one where he's like ripping the cover?
Yes.
Like he's ripping. Right?
It's Bruce Banner on one side and then the Gray Hulk on the other, and
he's like
the Green Hulk is busting through.
And that's like $1 book. It's like $1 too. It's an easy book to find. They're very cheap.
Yes. Oh yeah. And the thing is, it's one of those books that I think gets overlooked as such a brilliant book because, again, everything that was culminating at that point, the Pantheon and the Green Hulk coming back, everything that was happening with Betty, everything that was happening with Bruce at the time, it was in the middle of this, and all of a sudden, Bruce sees Betty. And he hadn't seen her in years, and he wanted to see her, and he's going like, Betty! And all of a sudden the Pantheon comes along with the car, and it gets him in the net, and he realizes Betty might get away. And by the time he gets out of this, all of a sudden he's so frantic and so aggravated, and like there was this scar going down his back, that the Green Hulk didn't just turn into the Green Hulk. The Green Hulk tore out of his skin, like ripped Bruce Banner apart. It was not only bloody, it was really like graphic for the Hulk book, for a mainstream Hulk book at the time. It is one of like the most like poetic, but also really gruesome.
And it's a Keown doing the art, right?
And it's Dale Keown, who
my favorite Hulk artist. I mean, I love Trimpe. Trimpe's very like it was very consistent and seamless, and like it just works. It was smooth. I loved it. But Keown, it was 90s, but it wasn't like too much 90s.
No, he had a style all of his own. He can draw the.
I like McGinnis too, but I love Keown.
Now, and see, they both have a certain.
The only Hulk books I ever collected were Keown issues.
Yeah, well, they both have very cartoony style, McGinnis and Keown, but Keown has a very realistic version of his style there, and 372 is definitely the issue to pick up if you want to see just how good a Hulk book can be.
Okay.
But that being said, if you want like a good run of the Hulk to read, start with Planet Hulk. Because not only that, they introduce all these new characters, but you get invested in all these characters. And the Hulk does things that he had, previously done. Like, the Hulk's always done these feats of strength. In Secret Wars, he held up the mountain from crushing all of the other heroes. During the Onslaught era, he was the only hero to actually break through Onslaught's armor. He made a crack in the armor, which was humongous, He's always done these things that no one else can do. In Planet Hulk, he does it all. In Planet Hulk, he is the savior. The Red King is constantly trying to figure out how to destroy this alien that has been brought to his planet. And he's like, all right, well, we'll just put him in the gladiator thing, and gladiators will take care of him. Yeah, that didn't work.
No, and you know what, too? And I'm going to actually, I do want to reread War of Hulk, because I read it as it was coming out, and the hype for that book was huge, and like nothing happens. But it's always got a bad thing. But I talked to a lot of people that actually like it, so I actually think I might reread it. I do want to reread Planet Hulk again too, because I read it so fast. But I talk about it so much, I feel like I keep rereading it. And I mean, the cartoon came out. The cartoon's not bad. I mean, it does just justice to it. I mean, obviously it's nowhere near as long and detailed, but. And the funny thing is it just shows you how people, they're like, in the cartoon, it's Better Ray Bill, not Silver Surfer.
Right,
and
I was about to say that they had to use Better Ray Bill.
They can't use Surfer because Fox still has the rights for it. And people get mad, like, I don't understand why it's not Surfer, because they can't use him.
Right, exactly. Here's the thing, too. Now, do you have a favorite moment from Planet Hulk? Was it the Surfer interaction?
The Surfer interaction was great, and just, actually, I can't, just rooting for the Hulk in the entire... it's like, what it is? Planet Hulk to me was like rooting against this player his entire career, and you hate him because he, always won, and then he gets injured, goes away, comes back with a team that from his hometown, comes back and he makes like a playoff run, and you just root for him because he's he's a 38-year-old guy, he's still playing, this is it, he's trying to get his championship at home. And you root for him. That's kind of how I felt with the Hulk.
Here's my favorite part. All right, well, number one, I own the art of when the Hulk dove into the big chasm, that was going to rip the planet apart. The Hulk dives in to save the planet, to pull the planet back together. He comes out of the lava and basically is jumping at the Red King. And this is the shot right before he hits the Red King that actually ends up killing the Red King. He comes out of the lava, completely burned, no more hair or anything else like that, and he's just ready to smash, which is really cool. I have that art, right? Love that moment. But the best me is when Korg, you know, the Stone Man, the alien.
Yeah, the supporting cast in that book is great. They're very likable.
Well, Korg, they keep on battling, and it's his warbound. It's like the Hulk with Korg, and then Meek, which is like the insect. You know, all of a sudden they're like, okay, now you have to face these characters, and it's 3 other aliens just like Korg, and they can't do anything to them. Like they're pretty much indestructible, except one of them hits. I think Korg hits one of them, and it like breaks a little bit off. I can't remember exactly, but all I do remember is that the Hulk was like, wait a minute, you guys can do damage to each other, right? So he just picks Korg up and starts smashing the other guys with Korg, like destroys the other 3 aliens. And Korg, like, then he puts Korg back down, and Korg's just like, whoa, my brother! Like, he's so upset that he just basically destroyed his other family.
Hey, listen, Battle World, you gotta do it, you know? Every minute, it's like a Royal Rumble, you know? Get out of my way.
Still, I think one of the most brilliantly written, and then Pack returned on the Hulk when the Hulk went back to numbering at like 600. Pack went back, and again, people wanted Planet Hulk, and this is again where social media was playing such a huge part, where people were just like, no, we want the greatness of the Planet Hulk back, and you're like, well, yeah, we get it. Again, Planet Hulk didn't happen overnight. There was a lot of build up to it.
Yeah.
So you gotta stick with it.
And it also worked because it was Planet Hulk. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
You can't have another one. You know? So that's why I love selling it to people. And I even tell people you don't have to read World War Hulk. You can just... A lot of people don't like a big commitment. They're just like, I just want to try it out. Read this and you're good. If you like it, you go something else. This is all you need to read. You don't need to read anything else. You know, you don't have to if you don't want to. I mean, maybe it will want you to come in. Because for every, like, 5... Planet Hulks we sell World War Hulk. So it does. People do go on with it. It's just that it's such an easy book to sell. And I think when I tell people that I actually do not like the character, and this is one of my favorite stories ever. I mean, that's saying something. When I'm like, yeah, I don't like the Hulk at all, but top 5 favorite comic book stories, this is in there. They're like, what? I'm like, it is.
Every time you say you don't like the Hulk, an angel loses his wings.
I don't like the Hulk. I don't like the Hulk. I don't like the Hulk.
But, no, I mean, it's one of those things, too, that, like, it was very reminiscent of classic stories, too.
Yes.
Like the Harlan Ellison, you know, Hulk, 141, with the whole Kai world, with Jarella and everything else. I mean, it was very, very reminiscent of all those issues. It just felt, you know, like classic stories. And it turned out that other people actually wanted to read it too. The Hulk is the strongest one there is, but of course there's also a sense of danger, because the Hulk got to a point where he became so indestructible, and it's not fun reading a character that's so indestructible that nothing's going to happen to him.
That's one of the Superman's problems.
Well, this is what's my problem with Deadpool too. Deadpool can't die. Like in Thunderbolts there that I was reading, when it was led by the Red Hulk there, you know, Deadpool gets eaten by this creature, and then gets spit up, and he puts himself back together, and then he's fine. And I'm like, well, what fun is that? Like, I don't get the appeal of characters that can completely, you know, overtake everything and never get hurt, never have any harm done to them.
No, yeah, because it's boring.
Yeah, and that's what was so fantastic about Planet Hulk, was for the first time, hey, guess what? You're not indestructible. You could actually die.
No.
You're still the strongest one there is, but, you know, there is that small percentage of, you know, you could possibly lose. No,
and the funny thing is, too, is going back to how Hulk isn't one of my favorite characters, my favorite part of the Avenger, the first movie, was the Hulk. I thought he stole the film. I thought he completed the film. He put everything together, and he was the main reason why I was like, thank you for, you know, like, I was almost angry I wasn't like 15 years old, because I'm like, I'm an adult watching this movie. I wish this came out when I was a kid, because of the Hulk.
Right.
when Hulk and Thor go at it, and the jet's there, and they're throwing on the bay in the helicarrier. I'm like, and he jumps on top of that jet, and that guy, you see the guy crap himself. You know, that is like I'm like, yes, they did it. This is amazing.
The Avengers was one of those things too, and all the stuff that was. I don't watch previews. I don't read spoilers. I don't do any of that because my whole thing is I want to go into a movie fresh. If I want to see a movie, I don't want to know the greatest parts. Now, if a preview comes on, I'm not going to, like, immediately...
No, but yeah, if you see a commercial, you're in the theater, it comes on, yeah, but you're not going to go look for it.
Right, and when they say, like, oh, teaser number 1 has been released on the internet, it's like, I don't care. On the interwebs, I'm walking away.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I do the same thing. Unless it's a movie, unless it's like a... Certain movies like Star Wars, I don't want to see anything for it because I want to be fresh, but everything else I want to see. I think mostly it has to do with work, too, because I need to see what characters are in it, but... I don't want to see it. I want to see it fresh. Right. I want to see it, you know, like without seeing any. Like Jurassic World, I didn't see. I just saw the trailers. That was it.
Yeah.
You know.
I want to know something, and before I go on with my point, but you know, what's funny about Jurassic World too, which I took my daughter to see. It was so much fun. She loved it. She thought it was a little scary, which it was, but at the same time, do you remember Comic-Con where Steven Spielberg says we're doing Jurassic World 4? And the entire world went, why? Like, no one cared.
No.
There was no hype for it. Nobody. Everybody was just like, all right, I guess. Like, that's fine. Like,
you know why? You know why 1 was the perfect film, 2 was awful, and
yes.
3 was like decent, but nobody went to see it.
So then, in the like 3 months before Jurassic World was released, all of a sudden, this hype started building up, and if you looked on what was it called? There's a thing where people track the positive and the negative buzz about certain things. If you looked on there, the positive buzz for Jurassic World shot up like unbelievable, and the moments before it was released, it was supposed to do, and this is coming from like the movie studios, it was supposed to have like $100 million opening, which is. It's good nowadays.
Yeah, and then they were like, you know what? It might be better than that. We're hoping for 130.
Yeah. They were hoping for 130, and all of a sudden, like the buzz around it was just so big. And you know what? Admittedly, it's not number 1.
No.
But it's really good.
Listen, you know what it is? It's a true summer blockbuster. It's Independence Day. It's that movie that everybody that summer went to go see. 10 years from now, is it going to be a classic? Absolutely not. I really enjoyed it. I loved it. I felt like it was the first movie like on steroids. Because you know what it is? The door opens and you go right into it. There's no explaining. You know what's good. This is what I like about this movie. You don't have to explain anything. You know what happened, okay? The park evolved. It's bigger. It's very interactive. The dinosaurs are smarter. And guess what? People got bored with them, so we made a new one. There you go. Boom. Chaos ensues. It's about people going to a theme park full of dinosaurs, okay? I want people dying, I want dinosaurs eating people, and I want people running around. And we got all that deal. My only downside to it was what lost it from the original was it was too much CGI.
Yes.
And people are like, what? It didn't work, and that's what happened with the prequels. You know, you got to have a little bit of both. I mean, it was very little in it, but they needed to have more. Because there were certain scenes I think would look better if it was half and half. But all that aside, it was a blast. I mean, I initially gave it 8 out of 10. The more I talk about it, the more I think I enjoyed it. I actually would give it a 9 out of 10 because it's.
Oh, I would agree.
It's summer.
And the funny thing is, Brad, the hero of the story, that could have gone one of two ways. It could have gone he's too cocky and he's too much of the hero where it's a little bit too much to watch. He plays the everyman so well.
You know why I like about you root for him too? Because when it all came down to it, all he cared about was like, dude, don't touch my raptors.
Yes.
Because you know why? He's like, I'm their parent. I train these things. They trust me. It's like there's a stray animal in your yard, and you do everything you can for months and months and months to finally get it come near you, defeat it, and then like your brother just goes outside and hits it with a bat in the face. It's like, no, I just did all this to get it to come near me. Now it's going to hate all humans, and that's the best part because it's very real in that sense.
greatest scene of the movie is when Jessica Chastain's bringing Chris Pratt to see the Indominus Rex. Number one, he makes fun of the name, and number two, he's like, "Wait a minute, so you made this thing grow up without any kind of positive reinforcement. It hasn't grown up around any other animals. All it knows is these four walls."
In that crane, the crane with the food.
Yeah, he goes, "Oh, that's it." He's like, "Yeah, that's really good. That's excellent." And his first thought is, "You're being unfair to this animal. You created a monster beyond just creating a dinosaur. You created a monster because of everything you just did." Yeah. So his first thought is of, you're mistreating this animal, and if anything happens, it's on you. It's not this animal is an evil animal. It's you did this, which was brilliant, you know.
No, I loved it. I thought it was a fun movie. So.
All right, but anyways, let me go. Last point before we end, where I was just gonna say, with the Avengers, there was so much mystery around what would happen with the Hulk, and he's not this super cut, like, you know, Hulk, which immediately people were like, the Hulk's super muscular, this is going to be a disaster. And everything was like a mystery. Nobody knew what was going to happen, but everybody had questions. And much like with everything else, there was all this rumor swirling around the internet of, you know, this is what I heard is the Hulk's going to do. I didn't read any of it. I didn't want to read any of it. I eventually, you know, you hear things through the grapevine, but I went into the Avengers clean. You know, I went into the Avengers without knowing anything, and I'm so happy I did, because that movie was so worth waiting.
Oh, it was, and it was, and it's going to hold up forever, because I compare that to the first Jurassic Park.
Yep.
Because is it going to be somewhat dated for certain aspects? Yes. But the feel of the movie and the way it's set up is exactly how all movies should be. You know, like I saw Jurassic Park 2 years ago for the 20th anniversary. 3 years, whatever it was, for the 20th anniversary. My wife took me to see it in IMAX 3D. And aside from like the lack of cell phones and like the computer screens, it could take place anytime.
Yep.
You know, and it was great. It was perfect. And to go back, it's Bryce Dallas Howard. You said Jessica Chastain or something.
Is it Bryce Dallas Howard?
Yeah. Yeah, of course I'm sure.
Wait a minute.
You said Jessica Chastain. I'm like, no, it's not. It's Bryce Dallas Howard.
Chastain and Bryce Dallas Howard might be the same person.
No, they're not.
Don't.
Bryce Dallas Howard is in charge of it.
I'm looking at it right now.
I don't need to look at it. I'm looking at you right now, telling you it's Bryce Dallas Howard.
And it's Bryce Dallas Howard. You're correct.
Of course.
But Jessica Chastain is just as hot. So if you should change either of them, it's fine.
Oh boy. Anyways, Ryan, thank you for being on here, bud. I promise you, I will have you on more. I know that you live 200 miles away. It's a little hard sometimes, but
we'll figure it out. No worries.
Yes, and as you know, I'm having another kid, so I'm not going to be up there anywhere near as much as I was. So the fact that if me and you being in the same room talking like this isn't going to happen for a long time. So.
Well, I can't wait for little Ryan to show up.
Who's little Ryan?
That's your new one coming. Is it your son? You right?
Oh, he'll be a boy, but his name isn't going to be Ryan.
You know, Ryan is actually a really brilliant name.
So, but give my love to the family, and I will. And I as much as I can't believe I'm saying this, I really enjoyed talking about the Hulk with you.
Yeah. Well, if you want to know more, go on to hulkcollection.wordpress.com. That's my site, and I keep it pretty well updated. For the.
And I noticed too, if you go to like Google and you just type in Ratchet's Hulk, it comes up too.
Oh yeah.
It comes up in the search. It comes up as Ratchet's Hulk collection. So.
Good stuff.
So very cool website, cool guy. Ryan, love you, bud, and I'll talk to you soon, buddy. All right.
All right.
Be good.